We're live.
Good evening, everyone. This is Scrappy Fan 92 of Storytime with Scrappy and Friends, back with yet another stopgap episode. I'm sorry to say that we could not resume the L stands for loser because Tanner was just not feeling well today, and we wish him well. So, in its place, we have our minimalist cast for this episode as we read the prequel to Walk Onward. With me today are Harry and Nova, once again, and today's story is called Drifting on a Wind, another Samurai Shodown fic written by Mr. Al Huang, who wrote this story's sequel, which we read in the last episode. And if you are a new viewer who is for whatever reason starting with this episode, I would recommend you go watch. Actually, no. Watch this one first. Oh gosh. Because this is the prequel. I keep on forgetting.
Yeah.
I'll leave a note in the other videos comment section to jump ahead and then double back. So yeah, if you're curious about what Samurai Shodown is, watch the previous episode's first 10 minutes.
And then come back. Oh, did we get?
Yes.
We got a follow.
Hello, HO03's numbers. So yeah, if you want to know what Samurai Shodown is, watch the previous episode's first few minutes, then watch this, then go back to the other episode.
Yeah.
So without further ado, this is Drifting on a Wind. Also, Nova will be taking over Rimaruru's voice for this episode because there's only 2 characters in the story. Without further ado, this is Drifting on a Wind by Al Huang. Shizumaru woke early. He always woke early, just as the sun was beginning to rise. Unless he was completely exhausted the night before from training, fighting, traveling, whatever it was. He would be up as dawn was breaking. The young man didn't know why it always happened that way. It just did. The same couldn't be said of his traveling companion. Sometimes she would rise about the same time he did, other times not. As he sat up and surveyed the clearing in which they had camped for tonight, he saw this was one of those not times. Across from the ashes of the small fire they had built last night, what appeared to be a large bundle of cloth lay rather still. The only sign that it was something other than that was a faint rise and fall indicative of breathing. Somewhere in there lay Rimaruru as she continued to sleep. Shizumaru smiled faintly. They had been traveling a couple of weeks now, after meeting near a village destroyed by some evil force. He had thought it was a demon he'd been seeking. She had thought it was Amakusa Shiro Tokisada, the power-mad sorcerer aligned with strange forces beyond their understanding. After a small series of misadventures, including some bullheadedness on his own part and then a chance encounter with Amakusa, the two had decided to seek out their goals together. After all, they seemed to understand each other. Wait, why was his hand reaching toward her? Shizumaru found himself crouching right next to Rimaruru, right by where her head emerged from her blankets. She had her face buried in the cloth, leaving only her mop of hair visible. His fingers were scant inches away from touching these short brown locks. He blinked, face burning a bright red. What was he doing? In an instant, he had snatched his hand back, an apology already forming on his lips. He stopped, though, once he realized that she was still asleep. The blush was still hot on his cheeks, now compounded with the foolishness he felt. He groaned softly, put a hand to his forehead. I must still be tired, Shizumaru muttered to himself. At this point, Rimururu mumbled something unintelligible in Ainu and rolled over. Shizumaru's ears pricked slightly. She'd been trying to teach him her language, and he was naturally curious what she was saying. That, however, was quickly forgotten as her face came into view. A faint smile was on her lips. She was really cute. And his hand was reaching out again, this time to touch her cheek. The boy leapt backward, bowed, and blurted out, "Excuse me, Rimururu-san. Forgive my rudeness." Heedless of the fact that she still hadn't woken up. He then turned around and headed off toward the nearby stream to wash his face and regain his senses with a couple splashes of cold water. Behind him, Rimururu raised her head, blinked muzzily at the form of Shizumaru's retreating figure, then went back to sleep, blissfully ignorant of this whole affair.
Shizumaru, is something wrong?
What, Rimururu-san?
You've been acting strange this morning, ever since I woke up. And your face is turning red again. Are you sick?
Shizumaru suddenly found a hand touching his cheek. He froze.
You're a little warm. See, you're sweating. You better take a rest.
His mouth opened and closed soundlessly until Rimururu finally took her hand away, eliciting a sigh of relief, but also faintly of disappointment, and gently but firmly steered him toward a large fallen log by the side of the road.
Sit,
she commanded. He did so. Rimururu sat down right next to him and dug around in her pack before extracting a water skin.
Here, have some.
Shizumaru accepted and took a sip of water. His mouth was remarkably dry. "Thank you, Rimururu-san," he said, glancing toward her. She smiled. He had to look away before his face flushed yet again. The two of them sat in relaxed silence, watching the leaves of the trees lining the road flutter lightly. The sun shone, birds chirped. The air was pleasantly warm. "It is a perfect day," murmured Shizumaru softly.
Yes, it is.
Were the log high enough off the ground that Rimururu's feet could dangle in the air, she would have been swinging her legs idly. Where were we going again? Rimururu turned to Shizumaru, looking slightly peeved.
Toward Edo, of course. I heard the rumors of strange attacks around there too.
Right, answered Shizumaru. He fell silent, looking downward. But I thought Edo was to the east. I believe he had been traveling west. I mean, we have been heading away from the sun this morning. Well, now we're going toward it, as it's now afternoon, so that means...
Why didn't you point this out earlier?
Interrupted Rimururu suddenly. The peeved look returned, but stronger. She sprang up and loomed over Shizumaru, who instinctively leaned back. She wasn't nearly as cute this way. Well, actually, maybe she was. In a different manner. Kind of scary, though. Because I was following you, and... Shizumaru stopped, hung his head. I do not know. The girl let out a heartfelt groan.
Why didn't I realize it myself?
She muttered darkly.
Get up. We have a lot of distance to make up.
With nary a further word, she reached for her pack, spun on her heel, and marched back down the way they had come. Chizumaru stared at her retreating figure and then jumped up, and hurried after. Wait, Rimururu-san!
We're lost.
Chizumaru nodded.
We should have passed the site where we camped by now, but I didn't see any sign of it.
Chizumaru nodded.
But we did follow the same road. We had to have.
Chizumaru nodded.
Stop nodding and say something.
Chizumaru nodded. So Rimururu whacked him. Ow! Rimururu-san, why did you do that? Rimu grumbled in frustration.
Because you're not helping. We have to find our way again. This forest is too thick.
Her eyes scanned the region. None of this looked familiar. Perhaps we missed a turn somewhere farther back, Chizumaru suggested, still rubbing his head where Rimururu had hit him. Chizumaru suggested, still rubbing his head where Rimururu had hit him.
Did something happen? Because I didn't hear, like, anything for, like, a minute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. There was just silence for, like, a minute.
And welcome back, Nova.
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah, I don't know how much you read, so I guess, I don't know, go back, like, one sentence, maybe?
Her eyes scanned the region. None of this looked familiar.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Perhaps we missed a turn somewhere farther back, Chizumaru suggested, still rubbing his head where Rimururu had hit him.
Telling you, we're still following the same way we came.
She snapped, spinning to face him. He shrank away slightly from the outburst, feeling her glare start to burn into him. You need not yell, Rimururu-san, he said, scowling a bit. She stared at him, then softened.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I'm not used to being lost.
She sighed.
I'm not used to being so far away from home. I know my way around there, but not here.
Chizumaru smiled back at her. It is all right, he answered. I understand. Rimururu blushed. Chizumaru wondered why, until he looked down at his hand. It had developed a mind of its own again, and had reached out to take hers in a gentle grip. Now he blushed, and let go, stepping away. I suppose we should try to get our bearings, he quickly said. Rimururu nodded. We need to see our way farther from this point somehow. Rimururu nodded. I can go climb a tree and take a look, perhaps? Rimururu nodded. Then she realized what she was doing and finally spoke.
I'll climb with you. Let's go with that tree.
And she was off toward a large oak, dropping her pack on the ground before starting upward. But wait for me! The ascent was quick, as both of them were rather agile. They soon found themselves near the top of the tree and looked around, straining their eyes for familiar landmarks. It was quite tall, and they could see for miles, it seemed. cannot see that clearing.
I can't either. But wait, is that the stream from that ran next to our campsite?
Where, Rimuru-san?
Over here. Let me show. Shizu.
What? As Rimuru turned, she had accidentally elbowed him, knocking him badly off balance. He windmilled slightly to regain his balance. She almost managed to grab his hand, but just barely missed. He fell off the branch.
Shizu.
Rimuru looked very panicked, Shizumaru decided, as he pitched off the tree. Much more than was warranted. But then, she'd never seen him use his umbrella this way quite yet. That is to say, after the second it took him to reorient himself, Shizumaru whipped his bamboo umbrella off his back next to his sword where he had strapped it earlier, snapped it open, and caught the air with it. Instead of plummeting like a rock, as Rimuru apparently had expected, he drifted down almost like a feather.
Shizu?
He could only imagine her wide-eyed look as she stared down after him, as his view of above was blocked out by the wide span of oiled cloth. As he floated, he picked himself away from the lower branches that grew out from the tree. Eventually, he touched down on the ground, where he closed the umbrella and looked up. Rimuru was already scrambling back down the side of the tree.
I'm so sorry, are you okay? Shizu!
She leapt down from the lowest branch, panting not out of exertion, but rather from relieved fear, and was by his side in the moment. I am fine, Rimuru-san. Do not worry. He managed to smile at her. Rimuru was not so easily calm, though, and looked near tears.
I'm so sorry. I'm not usually clumsy like that, but oh, you scared me so much. I didn't want to hurt you.
She almost wailed. But you did not hurt me. I'm all right. Please stop. You need not. Thud. The young man was presently interrupted in mid-hand-waving reassurance by a sudden tackling hug. Rimuru drew her arms around his midsection and hence drew him to the ground on his back, where he landed with a light bump of his head. Ow, Rimuru-san. Now you are hurting me. She didn't seem to hear him at first, instead simply burying her face in his chest.
I'm sorry.
She continued to say, somewhat muffled. She is overreacting, thought Shizumaru. His arms instinctively wrapped back around her, and he tried to pat her comfortingly. This was kind of nice. Rimuru finally lifted her head up, looking straight at Shizumaru. Their eyes met, and time froze for just a few moments. Blink. Blink.
Are you okay, Shizu?
She said, quietly. Shizumaru started to nod, then said, yes. Yes. Another moment passed, then both laughed nervously at the same time. Instead of a sudden springing away from each other, or rather Rimuru jumping off of Shizumaru and him then scrambling away, they slowly picked themselves up off the ground. Both were blushing badly, neither exactly sure why. In silence, they brushed the dust off and reassembled their gear. So, said Shizumaru, finally, you saw the stream that we had followed earlier.
Yeah, I think so.
Rimuru answered, softly. Let us go that way, then. The stream had turned out to be a bit farther than Rimuru thought. Even after an hour's walk, there was no sign of it from ground level. No choice but to continue on, though. Shizu, yes, Rimuru-san. He noted that she was now calling him by an abbreviated name.
Can you show me how to float on your umbrella like you did back there?
Shizumaru frowned slightly and glanced at said object. Well, it is not as easy as it might look. You need to learn how to balance while hanging on to the handle. Otherwise, you might tilt badly and then fall.
Oh.
Rimuru didn't sound too disheartened, but didn't say any more right away. How much do you weigh? He asked, before he could stop himself. Oddly enough, Rimuru didn't seem to mind the question.
About 6 stone.
She said.
Maybe a little less. Why?
Shizumaru nodded. I weigh a little more than 7. He held up his umbrella, regarded it carefully. I am not sure how much weight this can hold at once. It is strong, but it may not be that strong.
Hmm? Are you thinking of carrying me on it?
Rimuru grinned. He smiled back at her and nodded. But again, I do not know if it could bear both of us at once. Or, for that matter, how well I could balance with you along for a ride. Her face fell.
Oh well.
They continued walking a little longer.
Shizu?
Yes, Rimuru-san.
You don't have to call me son. Just call me Rimuru.
He paused, then nodded. Okay, Rimuru.
Anyway,
She continued blithely.
how much farther do you think it is to the stream?
There was another silence. Then he answered. I do not know. I did not get a chance to see the stream when we were back there on the tree.
Oh yeah.
Twitch.
Then maybe we should climb another tree and look again.
A faint note of embarrassment could be detected in her voice. Both stopped, looked at each other. Shizumaru nodded slowly. Why not? They found another tall oak and carefully made their way up. Rimuru first. She seemed to move with an extra measure of caution, often glancing downward as if to check on Shizumaru as he followed. Soon, they were once again in the canopy of the forest.
There it is!
Rimuru pointed. Shizumaru sighted down her arm from behind her, leaning against a leafy branch to steady himself. After a few seconds of peering through the greenery, he said, Ah, yes, I can see it. Once we get there and follow it, it should lead us to Edo.
Sounds great.
She turned her head to speak to him over her shoulder.
Can we rest first, though? We've been walking for a while.
Shizumaru nodded once, then began the descent. When he had almost reached the bottom, about to jump down to the ground, he glanced up and found Rimuru moving out onto a large branch just above. Rimuru, what are you doing?
I get up here. I think it'd be nice to take a break right in this tree.
She settled herself down on the branch, then beckoned.
Come on. I promise I won't knock you off again.
She grinned, and he smiled back at her after a moment. All right. It was not difficult for him to clamber back up and settle down to her right. They were close enough that their hips almost brushed against each other. The branch was quite wide, so there was little worry about falling by accident. Not too much, at least. Now, Rimuru swung her legs freely, while humming a soft tune. Shizumaru relaxed and looked out into the forest. He could actually see a bit of the stream from here. How much longer until sundown? He asked after a while.
We got several hours. I think. Plenty of time. It's summer after all.
A breeze suddenly gusted through, bringing with it a few stray leaves and some dust.
Ow!
Rimaruru, are you alright? What is it?
Something got in my eye.
She said, clasping her hand over her face.
Ow.
Shizumaru reached out, taking her shoulder so as to steady her. Here, let me see. She lifted her hand away, revealing a slightly reddened eye. He reached up and brushed a tear away, and peered into it. I think your tears washed it away. You'll be fine.
Thank you, Chizu.
Now he realized how close he was to her. He could see his own face reflected in her large, liquid brown eyes. It was only with great presence of mind that he prevented himself from jerking away suddenly, because that might have unbalanced one or both enough for a spill out of the tree. In fact, he wasn't moving away at all, and neither was she. They simply sat there. Another gust of wind flowed through, momentarily breaking the spell. Shizumaru quickly, but carefully, took the umbrella off his back and opened it, holding it out in front of both of them to create a shield. When the wind passed, he did not close it, but simply moved it upright, above the two of them. They simply looked out over the forest, not speaking. It was awkward, yet not awkward. The slightly tense air was in a way expectant and exciting. One waited for the other to speak, but was bursting to say something first. In the end, as such situations tend to go, they turned to each other at the same time.
Shizu?
Rimu? And both stopped, of course, then laughed, easing that tension just a bit. Shizumaru's left hand, the free one, reached for Rimaruru's right, clasping it. She entwined her fingers in his and squeezed gently. Each was blushing furiously at this point, but neither seemed to care, or even notice much. Rimururu, have you ever... Shizumaru couldn't work up the courage to ask it out loud, but Rimururu somehow caught on.
No, the boys back at Conway Town always thought that my sister and I were kind of strange. And I guess before now, I never really thought about.
He shrugged and smiled weakly. He nodded, fell silent before responding. And well, you know that I've kept myself apart from other people my entire life. He chuckled softly. I'm glad that I met you. Words ceased once more, and they looked into each other's eyes, smiling.
Do you want to kiss me?
What? Rimururu shifted on the branch nervously. She looked about as surprised as Shizumaru was at her own question.
Do you want to kiss me?
Shizumaru stared at her. Her eyes were wide open, inquisitive, uncertain, but they also held a sparkle of expectation. She unconsciously licked her lips, and he reflexively did the same. While continuing to study her face and its possibility before him, he found himself suddenly unable to speak. So he decided not to, and instead slowly leaned toward her. She did likewise, tilting her head slightly as he neared. Their lips met, hesitantly. She felt soft, warm, moist. They drew apart for a moment, as if slightly stunned by this tingling touch, then moved forward again to press more firmly against each other. Shizumaru closed his eyes, as he felt the warmth spread from the kiss throughout the rest of his body. Her hand tightened around his, and he squeezed back in response. His heart hammered, his blood pounded, and yet, part of him was at such wonderful peace. The wind picked up once again, buffeting the umbrella slightly. With reluctance, they finally pulled away from each other, blinking slowly. Before he could even open his mouth to say anything, though, Rimuru leaned against Shizumaru, nestling her head on his shoulder. He let go of her hand, wrapped his arm around her waist, and drew her against himself, resting his cheek against the top of her head. She smelled of earth and oak and pine and frost. She felt like a cloud that had drifted into his embrace. They stayed like this for a while longer. Minutes? Hours? Seconds? Whatever. He couldn't tell. He didn't care. How foolish of him to have wanted to say something earlier. This was all that was necessary. A brush against the base of his neck. She had slowly moved her arm up and across his back, and her fingers faintly tickled him there.
Shizu?
She murmured. Yes?
Do you want to kiss me again?
Shizumaru laughed softly. I do, but...
You will kind of ruin the first one to do it again so soon?
Yes. Rimuru just nodded.
We should really resume traveling, though. I know. We do not want to move either.
And more silence. Only heartbeats, soft breathing, and a rustling wind. The end.
Man, yeah, you weren't kidding when he said it was gonna be short.
Consider this your reward for pulling through those all-nighters in the last few months.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I can ever really do that again. Yeah, that was really cute. I enjoyed that. I mean, I don't remember what I said last time in the episode last week, but I feel like pretty much everything still stands. Like I even as someone who isn't that familiar with the characters, I felt like the author made it believable, and it was a very sweet short story with these characters.
Yeah, I'd say most of my observations that I lobbed at the previous episode story, I could lob at this one. It was nice. Yeah, it took me, since I read these out of order, I got surprised. I thought Shizumaru and Rimuru had their sacred first kiss in the second story.
Yeah, I thought that too. That's what I thought too. I wasn't really sure what I was expecting from this chapter, but or story rather. But yeah.
I appreciate this story for kind of just remembering that Shizumaru does have a parasol that he can use. That's his gimmick in the games. He has a concealed sword in his oiled umbrella.
See, I don't even know what these characters look like, so...
Shizumaru's like a young, kind of androgynous-looking boy. Who kind of looks like the protagonist of Rurouni Kenshin.
Okay.
So, like, red hair tied in a ponytail.
Okay.
Rimuru, well, she looks like a younger Nakaruru, but with blue.
Yeah, okay. That gives me a better idea. But yeah, it was good. Do you guys have anything else to add to that?
I don't have anything else, but Nova can say
Yeah,
her piece.
Yep. Well, pretty much my same thoughts as last time.
Alright then.
Definitely
Okay,
believable
so-
world. I enjoyed it.
Yep.
Yeah, it was, that's, what was I gonna say? It's a hallmark of these kinds of, this genre of story in general, but is, I guess, amusing if nothing else, that this is a world of, like, demons and, like, hellish samurai, and this is just a little low-key story about two kids trying to find themselves.
Yeah.
There's a humanity to this, so I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
I can agree with that. I can enjoy like the smaller kind of stories like this.
All this confirms to me, again, is that that Samurai Shodown would make a great TV show.
Yeah, I'm going through these. I can kind of believe that now. I mean, I'm only like seeing like a couple characters, obviously, but from the little I've been hearing, like it does seem like that's the case.
Nakaruru got a spin-off like 20 years ago, and there was an OVA series that was meant to tie into it, but only one episode was completed.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, yeah, Samurai Shodown's dabbled in animation a few times before, but nothing really long form.
So are we gonna read the other story, or what's gonna happen? Because we aren't even past the 40-minute mark. So I don't, what do you guys want to do?
See how long the story is.
It's like 3,000 words, I think.
I mean, I'm fine with what Nova is.
What do you want? Yeah, what do you want to do, Nova?
I guess I could do it.
Alright.
Like there was some I'm not going to refer to your family's background noise. It sounded like you have a full house tonight, so if you can't, it's fine.
No, my mom just interrupted me, but
Well, if it's fine to continue,
Okay, then I guess I will be voicing Reimu, unless Nova really wants to be Reimu. And Harry, you said there were 3 characters in the story?
I think so. I think it's just Reimu, Marissa, and fortune teller.
Okay, I'll voice Reimu and the fortune teller.
Okay.
Yes, this was a backup, not even a backup, it was a supplement to the backup we had. I just didn't get time to read it, folks.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to say what Toho actually is, because that's kind of a doozy, but...
I don't even know what Toho is. It is an indie shoot-'em-up series by a man called Zune that involves basically, I mean, it's in the name, it's like, what does it mean? Like Divine Eastern Project?
Something like that, yeah.
Japanese mythology in the form of slice of life.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yes, we got a Puyo Puyo story, so yeah, I haven't actually explained what Toho is. Okay, so yeah, Toho Project is just a kind of a slice of life Japanese mythology shoot 'em up video game series. And the central characters are Reimu Hakare, a shrine maiden and antisocial person. Mostly just kind of trying to live her life, but getting dragged into the various blood feuds of her neighbors.
More or less, yeah.
And Marisa Kiraname, I believe, is also Japanese or Japanese coded, but has more of the visual trappings of a Western witch.
Yeah.
She's Reimu's best frenemy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Together they fight crime. So today's story is by Mama_Chai. And this is a story on Archive of Our Own called The Fortune Teller. No, not that one. The summary is Marisa and Reimu get their fortunes read during a midsummer festival. Simple and to the point.
Yep.
So, without further ado, this is The Fortune Teller. No, not that one.
Come on.
Marisa said as she tugged hard on Reimu's yukata sleeve.
It'll be fun.
You know I hate fortune tellers, Reimu said, grimacing. The concept of them had never sat right with her ever since that incident.
It's a festival.
Marisa protested as she tugged harder. Indeed, it was a festival. Celebrations had started in the human village in honor of the midsummer harvest. Down every street and at every corner were stalls for foods, games, and gifts. The air was thick and warm, and filled with the laughter and conversations of the partygoers. Above the streets hung glowing red lanterns, painted and decorated to accommodate the summertime aesthetic. They blew gently in the wind as warm, sweet air glided in from the north. It foretold of colder weather, but, for now at least, the summer night was a perfect one for a festival. Reimu, adorned in her favorite checkered red yukata, was being tugged forwards by Marisa. He was dressed in a striped blue and white Western-style summer dress, complete with a wide-brimmed and heavily damaged sun hat.
Please.
Marisa pleaded.
Come on, I'll pay.
No, you won't, Reimu said flatly, catching her in the obvious lie. Marisa turned back to her and stuck out her tongue.
Well, who's gonna pay with your money?
No! Reimu protested again. Marisa let go of Reimu's sleeve and folded her arms, obviously annoyed. The last time I had to deal with a fortune teller, I had to exterminate him.
I know, but this one will be different.
Marisa said.
I heard this one's not some creepy old guy. This one's a cute girl.
There's men in Toho. Marisa said, grinning a scheming smile. No doubt this evening would end with one of two options, Reimu assessed. One, Marisa would seduce the fortune teller into leaving her booth and persuade her into accompanying her to the festival as a date, thus leaving Reimu as a third wheel for the rest of the night. Or two, Marisa would strike out with the fortune teller, making her feel dejected, thus leaving her clingy, which would inevitably lead to Marisa clinging onto Reimu the entirety of the night. The second option didn't sound too bad, Reimu noted with a nervous squirm in her stomach. Recently, reluctantly, she had admitted to herself that she was indeed unconditionally and irrefutably in love with Marisa. This admittal had taken years, decades even, to come to light. Now that she had acknowledged it, it had become constantly the very forefront of her thoughts. The idea of having Marisa so close, well, it was a 50-50 shot. Might as well go for it. Fine, Reimu said reluctantly. Marisa literally jumped for joy. Her wide sun hat bounced with the movement. She had to reach up to steady it before it fell off. Marisa shot her hand forwards and took Reimu's in her own. Reimu felt a flood of absolute delight fill her body. She tightened her grip on Marisa's hand, wishing to never let go.
Then let's go.
Marisa said as she led them forward. Somewhat reluctantly, Reimu followed. She tried not to think about the high likelihood that Marisa would soon be flirting with another woman. Instead, she focused on her intertwined hands. Marisa's hand was so calloused, yet so warm. Reimu felt a nearly uncontrollable urge to bring it to her lips and kiss it, finger after finger, knuckle after knuckle. Reimu fell into a daze as she daydreamed about this. Her fantasies led her in another direction. This time, Marisa was kissing Reimu's own hands. Would her lips be just as warm? Would they be chapped? Would they be soft? Probably a bit of all the above. Reimu had spent so much time staring at them recently, she had memorized every angle and curve. She could practically imagine exactly what they felt like if she had tried hard enough. Still, Reimu's heart yearned to feel her lips in reality, not just in her daydreaming. She had no idea how long she had been lost in her daze, but before she knew it, Marisa was calling her name. She was dragged violently out of her thoughts, and found herself blinking in the warm glow of the red festival lanterns once again.
You doing okay?
Marisa asked, looking mildly worried. I'm fine, Reimu said, shaking her head to chase away the lasting Marisa-ridden clouds in her mind.
We're here.
Marisa said, nodding towards the large booth before them. It was draped in purple curtains, obscuring the inside, and the smell of sage and lavender incense was emanating from it. It stood out like a sore thumb next to the gift shop stalls flanking it on either sides. The vendors in these stalls seemed disgruntled to be set up next to it, to say the least. They were obviously outshined by its grandiosity, and it seemed their business sales had tanked because of it. "Come in," said a light voice from behind the purple curtain. Marisa whistled in approval.
She's already good. No way she could have known we were out here.
Or she just peeked out the curtain, Reimu said under her breath. They made their way inside of the booth, closing the curtain behind them. They were immediately swallowed up by near-complete darkness. Their eyes had to adjust to the dim candlelight, which was the sole source of lighting in the entire booth. The candles were black and were set on a large old wooden table just inside. A short young woman sat at that table, idly shuffling a deck of cards in her hands. She had shoulder-length curly hair, and her face was unimpressive, save for a pair of dark shadowed hollows under her eyes, which were visible even in the darkness. She looked up at them and smiled as she shuffled her deck one last time before setting it loudly on the table. The candle shook slightly with the impact. The wiggling light of the burning flames gave the tent a disorienting shake before settling back down once again. "Ah, so the Miko and the witch have come for a reading. I've foreseen this." "Uh-huh," Reimu said, completely unamused. She had seen enough. Ooh. The decor, the obvious makeup, this entire booth was fake. She was about to get ripped off by this actress just for the entertainment of Marisa. She sighed, annoyed. "Please, take a seat," the fortune teller said as she motioned to the two seats sitting opposite her on Marisa and Reimu's end of the table. Strange, Reimu hadn't noticed these chairs at first, but it was dark after all. Reimu and Marisa did what they were told. Marisa leaned in eagerly towards the table. She eyed the fortune teller's deck with wide, greedy eyes. Reimu idly wondered if Marisa would attempt to swipe them. My name is Umihana, the fortune teller said as she split the deck before her. I'm a tarot reader, and my specialties revolve around predictions of the future.
Ooh.
Marisa exclaimed slowly. She turned to Reimu in a hushed voice.
Reimu, that's so cool.
Your names are Kirasama Marisa and Hakure Reimu, Umihana said confidently. How typical, of course she would say something. How typical, of course she would say that after Marisa had just said her name. After how she knew Marisa's name, she probably overheard them talking outside or something. Yeah, Reimu said. She eyed a deck in Umihana's hands. Umihana shuffled it once again. How annoying. Would she be any more performative? You would like a reading? Umihana asked. That's why we're here, Reimu said bluntly as she folded her arms. Umihana cast her eyes on Reimu and frowned, yet she cut the deck once again without looking down. What would you like to ask the cards? Your futures and fortune? Perhaps luck? Or... Her eyes focused flatly on Reimu. Would you like to ask about love? Reimu swallowed.
Oh.
Marisa was practically jumping up and down in her seat.
I want to ask about fortune. Want to get rich?
Umihana looked over at her and smiled a cryptic smile. So it's fortune you seek. Umihana placed the cards on the table before spreading them out in a long fan shape. The card backs were purple with inlays of gold accents, which glittered ominously in the candlelight. The shining gold details reflected greedily in Marisa's eyes as she scanned over them impatiently. Draw just 3, Umihana said as she motioned to the cards. Marisa's hand shot out and she did just that. She grabbed the 3 closest to her as if she were afraid that Umihana would take the cards back. Marisa flipped the cards over in her hand and looked at them questioningly. Place them flat on the table, please, Umihana said as she collected the remaining cards on the table and patted them neatly back into a deck once again. Marisa did just that, flipping them over one at a time and placing them down before Umihana. A bright moon, reverse 4 of pentacles, reverse 9 of cups, Umihana said as she examined the cards before her. Reimu looked at the cards as well. She couldn't read the writing on them. It must have been in some foreign language. She squinted at them, attempting to decipher them. One was obviously a moon. The other 2 seemed to just be random images of men. What was a 4 of Pentacles? She asked herself. Probably made up, she decided. Umihana frowned as she looked between the cards and Marisa. Umihana hummed as she placed her fingers together.
Is that good?
Marisa asked excitedly. How do I break this to you? Umihana asked slowly, as if to herself. Marisa frowned. She looked down at the cards worriedly.
Break what to me?
Umihana breathed out her nose and shook her head. She tapped the cards one at a time, muttering something to herself. The candlelight flickered as she did so. You, Marisa, she began, are a greedy, lying woman. You're careless with your spendings. I see nothing but financial ruin in the future for you.
Are you kidding?
Marisa shouted. The flames flickered, and Umihana shook her head sadly as she collected the 3 cards. And, unfortunately, I don't see your demeanor or financial luck changing anytime soon.
No way, no way.
Marissa said, reaching for the deck. She took the very top card of the deck and slammed it hard on the table.
Read that one. Tell me your prediction's wrong. This one's really lucky, right?
Marissa said desperately. Everyone looked down at the card. It was an image of a tall building crumbling and burning.
Is that good?
Marissa asked. Umihana shook her head and took the card back. The tower, Umihana said lowly. Unfortunately for you, Marissa, that's widely agreed upon to be the worst card in the deck.
Damn.
Marissa said, leaning back in her chair defeatedly. Umihana shook her head and collected the singular card on the table. My advice for you, Umihana said as she began shuffling the deck again, is to turn over a new leaf. Or, that would be my advice if I didn't know that was completely impossible for you. At this, Reimu laughed. The sound caught the attention of the fortune teller. She eyed Reimu up and down for a second before smiling a knowing smile. And for you? She asked nonchalantly as she began shuffling her deck once more. Reimu, what would you like to ask the deck? Reimu said, still smiling at Marissa, who was deep in a depressive pout. Surprise me. Love it is, Umihana said immediately, as if she were expecting this answer. As Reimu heard this decision, her head shot in the direction of Umihana. Umihana was smirking at her. Her dark brown eyes glinted with something in the candlelight. Marissa also perked up at Umihana's words. Marissa said as she elbowed Reimu in the side.
Who will the great Hakuri Reimu fall in love with?
Marissa joked. Reimu huffed and shook her head. Marissa only knew. Umihana set the deck of cards down on the table and spread it out in a fan shape once again. Draw 3 cards, please, Umihana said. Reimu leaned forwards begrudgingly and drew. She turned them over in her hand before placing them on the table. She once again couldn't tell what 2 of them were, but she could clearly see one depicted 2 people holding hands. Reimu thought as she felt a swirl of butterflies in her stomach. Reimu placed the cards down on the table nervously. Marissa leaned forwards over her shoulder and examined them curiously. Umihana said as she simply cast a glance at Reimu's cards.
Was there stuff that I missed? Did anything get said after something Reimu's cards?
She collected the deck once again and placed it aside as she looked Reimu directly in the eyes.
Okay.
Umihana hadn't even looked at Reimu's cards for more than 5 seconds. Reimu swallowed. Was that bad? Was it that bad? Upright Knight of Wands, upright 4 of Wands, upright Lovers, Umihana said deliberately slowly. Reimu swallowed again. And Lovers, Reimu. Umihana began, a smile spreading wider across her face. I'm sure you can guess the Lovers card depicts. Is that good? Umihana laughed and nodded. Yes, I'd say it's good. Umihana shook her head as she tapped the card depicting the two people holding hands, before doing the same to the other two cards. Yes, in fact, your whole hand is good. Umihana sat back in her chair. It creaked under her weight. Reimu, it seems you're to be very lucky in love. You will find happiness, and you will find it soon. In fact, as Marisa drew the worst card in the deck, you've drawn the best, she said. Which is the Four of Wands. Ah, yes, and in a love reading too. Like, congratulations. I see a wedding close in your future. A wedding? Reimu and Marisa said in unison. Reimu blushed beet red. She cast a glance over at Marisa and found Marisa was also blushing, and hard too. It seems your love is requited. Requited? Again, congratulations. Umihana said with a light laugh. The candles in the booth let out a small crackle as if they were laughing as well. This is all just fake, Reimu tried to remind herself. But what if? Requited love? A wedding? What? Reimu asked quickly.
With who?
Marisa demanded. Umihana laughed hard at this. I have the hiccups. She drew the very top card of the deck and slapped it down at the table. The card depicted a witch. The magician, Umihana said without even looking down at the card. Both Marisa and Reimu choked. Reimu couldn't bear to look at Marisa, but she could feel Marisa's eyes boring in onto her face. Reimu was barely breathing. It felt as if her world was spinning. Now, now the magician could mean a lot of things. It can mean a best friend, someone powerful, someone adept at taking action, someone confident and resourceful. Can you think of anyone like that? Umihana asked, but she was shuffling her cards again as if she weren't listening for a reply. Reimu swallowed. Her throat was so dry it hurt. This wasn't fake. This was real. Could it mean... Reimu finally found it in herself to look at Marisa. Marisa was still staring at her. Her face was set like stone. Her gold eyes glimmered questioningly in the candlelight as if she were trying to make herself ask something, but was unable to. Her lips, set in a firm straight line, parted as if she were going to say something, but instead closed once again. Reimu realized she was staring for just a second too long and quickly looked away. Instead, she focused her gaze on Umihana, who had started whistling nonchalantly. Is that it? Reimu asked. Is that my reading? Is it? Umihana asked. Don't be cryptic, Reimu all but pleaded. She needed to know it. She needed to know if this was real. She needed to know what to do. What am I supposed to... My suggestion, Umihana said as she sat down her deck of cards, is to embrace your feelings. Love will follow. Oh, okay, Reimu said quietly. Now, Umihana said, clearing her throat, for 2 readings that will be 4,000 yen. You're kidding, Reimu demanded. Umihana shook her head dismissively. She tapped the sign which definitely wasn't there 2 seconds ago. Tarot readings, 2,000 yen. Reimu angrily took out her wallet from her pouch purse, momentarily forgetting the swarm of butterflies in her stomach. She slapped the money down onto the table. She was about to cast a dirty look at Marisa, blaming her for the expense. But she stopped when she saw Marisa was looking abashedly at the ground, twiddling with her fingers. She glanced up at Reimu and quietly said,
Thanks for paying.
Marisa just seriously thank her? Reimu blinked. Umihana chuckled to herself and collected her fee from the table. She nodded and offered the two women a smile. Please come back anytime. I'll be here the rest of the weekend. Oh, and tell your friends, Umihana said. With that, Reimu and Marisa, both still quietly blushing to themselves, stood and exited the small tent. They were immediately assaulted with the bright lights of the red lanterns and the sounds of the crowd surrounding them. Only then did Reimu realize how quiet it had been inside the booth. Reimu and Marisa stood there for a very long moment, neither of which saying anything. Then Marisa cleared her throat.
I'm hungry.
She said in her best attempt at her normal speaking voice. Okay, Reimu said dumbly, not knowing exactly what else to say.
Let's go get some takoyaki or something.
Marisa said as she extended her hand for Reimu to take. Reimu looked at it in disbelief for a long moment before taking it in her own. Marisa interlaced her fingers with Reimu's and gave her hand a squeeze. Reimu felt her heart jolt. She squeezed Marisa's hand back. They made their way down the street away from the fortune teller's tent, hand in hand. The end.
Doing all the fluff today.
Well, I enjoyed it. It was...
Yeah.
I can't talk right now, my tongue feels dry.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed this story. Mainly, honestly, for very similar reasons to the Samurai Shodown one. I mean, in this case, I actually know the characters, so like I have like actual background to that. But besides that, I thought, I thought it was really cute and nicely written. Simple story that just kind of works. I enjoy Reimu being really like, I don't want to do this, like this is gonna cost so much money and all that, so that's fun. Like the characterizations are pretty spot on. And yeah.
Oh dear, pardon me. Yeah, it feels in character for what little I know of Reimu and Marisa. Like, Reimu's just getting dragged along by life.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Yes, I enjoyed the setup, and I just realized, like, the author set up a friggin' summer festival romance arc like this was some kind of high school anime, and
Yeah. Pretty much.
oh gosh, I can.
Yeah.
It's so transparent. I respect it.
Yeah, it's also the kind of story where it ends in a way where it could get a sequel. I mean, I don't know if the author plans on making a sequel, but I would love to read that if they ever end up doing that.
Oh dear, gosh, I think the letters T and D were really messing me up today. I'm not sure if you call that a gliding vowel, but the door.
I feel like sometimes there are just days where sometimes words, like specific words or letters, just feel weird to say. I don't know what it is.
English is a hellscape of a language.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to say about it, or do you want Nova to go on?
I think I said my piece.
Okay. Yeah, did you have any thoughts, Nova?
Cute little story. It was definitely funny seeing Reimu just struggle internally, just trying to keep her composure.
Yeah, that is very relatable.
Yep, everyone's had that moment before.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever fantasized about the excessive textures of my crush's hands before, but spirit is. I get the spirit of it.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Well, I suppose it was kind of appropriate to read these stories together.
Mm.
Like, even ignoring that they're both fluff, it just kind of works to cover like two kind of heavy like Japanese mythology series.
Yeah. They felt pretty similar in tone as well, so I think it worked out.
Those definitely felt a lot more comedic, which I guess
Yeah.
matches the tones of the source material.
Yeah, I think Toho is definitely a more more just comedic in it. Yeah.
Whimsical.
Yeah, it's more whimsical, I guess. It's less I mean, again, I don't know too much about Samurai Shodown, but I assume it's a lot more that series would be a lot more grounded, I guess.
Violent and moody, yes. Grounded.
Yeah. Okay, maybe that's not the best way to put it. More serious, I guess.
I guess. Like, yeah, Samurai Shodown is like a violent series.
Yeah.
Like, these stories, by comparison, are like just very pretty happy and restrained by comparison.
Mm-hmm. But
Well,
yeah.
I think that's all I've got. Thank you all for being here on short notice for another stopgap.
I'm just glad we got an episode done at all.
Yeah, barring another misfortune, we should be back next week to finally finish the L stands for loser. Not making promises.
Yeah.
And well, by the time next week starts, we'll be in spooky month, so I guess we have to do something Halloween appropriate soon.
Yeah, we can figure something out.
I mean, reading Star Wars is kind of like a horror story.
Yeah. God.
So yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll find something. Maybe I'll dig up a Scooby-Doo story.
Mm.
And yes, if for those who I guess didn't watch a previous episode, the Super Mario Show Chapter 7 is finished. It's just we're just not reading it yet because we want to get the other Mario story done.
Yeah, I don't want to get too much Mario at the same time.
Mark is just a waddling head. Like, it's always been true, but it's more apparent now than ever.
Oh.
Why, yes, I do like disarming you by just talking about the game randomly.
Yeah, I just can't... Yeah, I'm not really thinking about that... Thinking about, like, the fact that I'm actually streaming a game while doing this. So it kind of throws me off when you do that.
You're welcome. I mean, we could read some Kirby fanfiction at some point.
I wouldn't mind that. I don't know of any Kirby fanfiction, let alone any good ones, so... We'll have to scout the web for that, but... maybe Xavier knows something, who knows?
Oh yeah, Xavier's on the show sometimes.
Oh yeah, that and he's also the resident Kirby guy, so... That's about all I've got for today though, so I guess you wanna close out?
This is still one of our shorter episodes.
It is, yeah, it's still one of the shorter ones, even after doing 2 stories. But
Yeah, just
hey.
enjoy this while you can, because we're probably gonna be doing a lot of long runners soon.
Yep.
Oh gosh. Okay, well, final thoughts, Nova? Nova?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Final thoughts?
I definitely enjoyed my time today. Again, you're welcome.
Alright then, well, I think that's all I've got. So yes, we'll hopefully reconvene next week to read something.
Yep. And hopefully we're back next week, just in general, because yeah, when we haven't always been the best at that.
Yeah, and scheduling's arguably worse than ever, because now Harry has to actually be responsible.
Yeah, now I actually have a class that I need to do every week for the next couple months, so we need to try and plan these a bit better. But yeah, either way, I guess we'll hopefully see you guys next week for the L stands for loser finale. I suppose. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us for our 45th episode, non-spectacular. We made it to 45 episodes. I'm as surprised as you all are.
Yeah. Oh man. Hopefully we can keep this train going for a while. Alright, do you want me to stop now?
Yes, I guess we can. Good night, folks. Stay safe.